The first sign my wife had brought my new helper into my house was not lipstick on a collar or some text message lighting up in the dark. It was his cigarette butts in the ashtray by my back door. I'm a mechanic. Not the kind with a polished front office and a waiting room coffee machine. I run a two-bay garage behind my house, mostly old trucks, farm rigs, work vans, whatever people need to keep moving when they can't afford a new engine or a dealership price tag. I'm 56 years old, and I've spent more of my life under hoods than I have sitting still. My garage sits maybe 30 feet behind my house with a gravel path between them. I built the place with my own hands after my first wife died, back when I still thought keeping busy was the same thing as healing. Years later, when I married Dana, she used to joke that she got two husbands, me and the garage. She wasn't wrong. I've always worked in old habits. Lunch at the same time. Coffee strong enough to melt a spoon. Parts organized by memory more than labels. I wash my hands in the utility sink by the toolbox before I go anywhere near the house, because there's no point tracking grease across the floor if I can help it. Dana got into the habit of bringing my plate out to the garage around noon and again in the evening, if I was still finishing something up. Said she'd rather walk food out to me than have me stomp through the kitchen in work boots, smelling like oil and brake cleaner. For a long time, that felt like love. Dana was younger than me by 11 years. Not enough that people stared, but enough that I noticed it in the way she moved through the world. Quicker, lighter, still expecting life to hand her a few surprises. I had married young once, buried young once, and by the time I met Dana, I wasn't looking for excitement. I wanted peace. I wanted somebody who didn't mind that I came in tired and quiet and usually still thinking about whatever engine I'd left half open out in the shop. At first, she fit that life just fine. Then last spring, she started bringing up a man named Tyler. He was, according to her, an old classmate. Not an old boyfriend. Not somebody she stayed close with. Just a guy she'd known back in high school who had fallen on rough years and was trying to get steady again. She mentioned him once while we were eating, then again a week later, then again after church on Sunday, like she was laying boards across a creek one at a time. He's good with his hands, she said. Just never had anybody really teach him. I grunted and kept eating. He needs work. A lot of people need work. He's not asking for a handout, Roy. He just needs somebody to give him a shot. I looked up at that. Roy is my name, and Dana only used the soft version of my name when she wanted something or when she thought I was being too hard. I don't run a charity, I said. She leaned on the counter, arms folded, and gave me that patient look that always made me feel older than I was. You started somewhere too. That part got me, because it was true. When I was 19, an old mechanic named Walter Bell let me sweep floors, sort bolts, and watch over his shoulder until I learned enough not to embarrass him. Men like Walter don't come around much anymore. They're mostly gone, and with them went a certain kind of apprenticeship. You don't get taught. You get hired, rushed, and replaced. Dana knew all that. She knew exactly where to press, so I told her to have him come by. Tyler was 30, maybe 31, lean, good-looking in the tired kind of way, with that scruffy face men wear when they want to look like life happened to them instead of choices. Polite. Not fake polite. Just careful. He said sir too often at first, which usually means a man either wants something or knows he's already on thin ice. He said he'd done oil changes, brake jobs, some warehouse work, some landscaping, nothing stable. He said he wanted to learn enough to make real money with his hands. He said he was done bouncing around. I told him straight that I didn't need much help and couldn't promise more than hourly pay to start. He nodded like I'd offered him a future. Dana was in the kitchen window when I walked him back to his truck, smiling. That should have bothered me more than it did. The first few weeks, Tyler worked hard. Showed up on time, listened more than he talked, didn't pretend to know what he didn't know. I'll give him that. He learned quick, too. Not natural gift quick, just hungry quick. He watched how I diagnosed sounds, how I laid tools out, how I kept bolts grouped by removal order on old valve covers. The kind of thing you only absorb if you're paying real attention. I started trusting him around simple jobs. Brake lines, starter swaps, basic maintenance. After a month, I let him close up on his own if I had to run to the parts store before we finished for the day. Dana seemed pleased every time I said he was improving. He just needed somebody to believe in him, she told me once. I remember that line because later it made me sick. The first thing that felt off happened on a Thursday evening in late August. I came around the side of the house after locking the garage and saw 2 cigarette butts crushed into the old tin ashtray by the back door. Marlboro Reds, smoked almost to the filter. I stood there looking at them longer than I should have. I quit smoking 8 years ago after my doctor started using the word concerning too casually. Dana never smoked. She hated the smell. The ashtray stayed there mostly because her sister used it on holidays and because country people never really throw useful things away. Tyler smoked Reds. I'd seen the pack in his shirt pocket more than once out in the garage. That bothered me, though not enough to start a war in my own head. Tyler worked on my property. Maybe he stepped over there while I was inside using the bathroom off the laundry room. Maybe Dana was outside talking to him while I finished paperwork. There were explanations, but the ashtray was by the back door, not by the garage, not by the gravel path, by the door people used when they were coming in like they belonged there. At dinner I asked, casual as I could, "Tyler come in the house today?" Dana didn't look up from her plate. "No, why?" I said. "Just asking." She shrugged. "He used the outdoor spigot to wash his hands before he left. That's it." I let it go. Then 2 days later I found another one. Same brand, same ashtray. Fresh. This time I asked Tyler, "You smoked by the house yesterday?" He wiped his hands on a rag and frowned like he was thinking hard about a question that shouldn't have required thought. "No, sir. I smoked out by the road before I left." That answer came too smooth. I just nodded and went back to the truck we were working on. It was not proof, not even close. But what I had then was worse in a way. I had a small thing that didn't fit and 2 people giving me answers that felt just a hair too ready. Once something gets under your skin like that, your whole life starts sounding different. You notice where people look when you ask simple questions. You notice when a laugh comes half a beat late. You notice how familiarity moves through a space. Tyler had started calling into the house without stepping all the way in. "Miss Dana, you need anything from town?" Stuff like that. Harmless on its face, but familiar. Too familiar for a man who was supposed to be there to learn work, not settle into a household. Then came the day that made it impossible for me to keep explaining things away. I drove an hour and a half south for a transmission casing a man was holding for me off an old F250. Took longer than I expected because his cousin wanted to stand around talking, and because half these old part-timers think your afternoon is theirs if they have a folding chair and a story. By the time I got back, the light had gone flat and yellow. Tyler's truck was gone. The garage was shut. Dana called from the porch, asking whether I wanted supper right away. I said I needed to wash up first. Now, when I'm working, I don't usually shower in the house until I'm done for the night. If I'm real dirty, I wash off the worst of it in the utility sink in the garage, forearms and neck and face. Dana liked it that way. Said the smell of grease followed me to bed otherwise. Fair enough. That evening, I rinsed my hands in the shop sink, came inside through the mudroom, and headed for the master bathroom. The moment I opened the door, I stopped. The glass shower panel was still fogged in the corners. Not drenched, not steaming, just recently used. There was a black-gray smear along the white shower threshold, the kind a greasy heel or a dirty hand leaves when somebody thinks water erases more than it does. My dark work towel was damp on the rack, even though I hadn't touched it since the morning before. The cap on my industrial soap was flipped open. I stood there with one hand on the doorframe and just looked. I knew what I had done that day. I knew what I had not done. I had not come home early and showered. I had not used that bathroom. I had not left grease in the shower by my own bedroom like a man too lazy to care. Dana was in the kitchen when I came back out. "You shower already?" I asked. She turned from the stove. "No. Why?" "The bathroom's wet." She stared at me for half a second too long. "Oh, I cleaned it." With my soap open and grease on the threshold? That made her eyes shift. Just once. "Maybe from your towel," she said. "You probably didn't notice." I looked at her and felt something inside me go very quiet. I did not accuse her. I did not raise my voice. I just nodded, sat down at the table, and ate half a plate of food I never tasted. That night I lay awake next to her, listening to the air conditioner kick on and off, and the thought that kept grinding through my head was simple and ugly. If Tyler had been in my shower, then this was no longer a suspicion. It was an arrangement. The next morning, I began asking questions in the smallest way possible. To Tyler, around 10, while he was putting away sockets, I said, "You go inside yesterday while I was gone?" He didn't even turn around at first. "No, sir." Then he looked back at me. "Why?" "Thought I saw the mudroom light on." He gave a little shrug. "No." I closed up and left. An hour later, when Dana brought lunch out to the garage, I asked, "Tyler go inside yesterday before he left?" She shook her head. "No." "Why do you keep asking me that?" "No reason." That was it. That was the moment I stopped hoping I was wrong. Because when two people tell the same lie without needing time to build it, they've told it before. I didn't buy indoor cameras. I didn't turn the place into a surveillance van fantasy. I bought 2 plain outdoor cameras from a farm and hardware store 20 miles over where nobody knew me. Battery-powered, motion-activated, simple. One I mounted under the eave of the garage where it could see the side yard, the gravel path, and the back steps to the house. The other I tucked under the porch line at an angle where it could catch anyone walking from the garage side toward the back door. From the ground, they looked like normal security lights unless you were trying real hard to see trouble. I did not tell Dana. For 3 days, I saw nothing I could use. Tyler worked, smoked by the road, left. Dana carried plates in and out, watered her plants, called her sister. Ordinary life kept trying to put my mind back in its cage. Then on Monday, I made my move. At lunch, I told Tyler I had to drive to Baton Rouge the next day for a full set of suspension parts, and probably wouldn't be back until dark. He nodded, said he could handle the brake job on the Silverado and clean up after. That evening, I told Dana the same thing. She barely reacted, but I noticed she asked what time I thought I'd be back. Not whether I needed her to ride along, not whether I wanted her to call in and order somewhere. Just what time. "Late," I said. The next day, I left just after 1 in the afternoon in my old dually, drove 30 minutes east, then turned off onto a frontage road behind a closed feed supply lot and parked in the shade. At 2:17, my phone buzzed. Motion at garage. Tyler was on camera pulling the big garage door down earlier than usual. He checked the latch, wiped his hands on a rag, then looked toward the house. No hesitation, no uncertainty. He walked the gravel path like he'd walked it 100 times. 30 seconds later, the second camera caught Dana opening the back door before he even knocked. He stepped inside. That should have been enough. It was enough, really. But I sat there anyway with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing like a man trying to keep something hot from breaking loose in his chest. At 2:43, another motion alert. Dana came out and took Tyler's boots from the porch, took them inside. Like this was normal. Like she had her own little system for protecting my floors from the dirt she used to say only I carried in. That detail nearly did it for me. At 3:11, the bathroom window by the master bedroom fogged at the edges. I didn't need to see anything else. I drove home slow on purpose because I knew if I rushed, I'd walk in too hot. I didn't want hot. Hot gets stupid. I wanted clear. I came in through the side garage door into the mudroom, quiet enough that the TV from the living room covered the sound. Tyler was standing in my kitchen barefoot. That is still the image I remember most clearly. Not him in bed. Not some dramatic, half-dressed scene. Just Tyler, barefoot on my kitchen tile, hair still damp from a shower. Wearing a plain gray t-shirt I recognized as one of mine from the rag pile that sometimes ended up in the laundry if Dana got ambitious. He had a glass of iced tea in his hand. Dana was by the sink, and the two of them looked so natural for 1 second that it almost made me wonder whether I was the intruder. Dana saw me first. Everything in her face collapsed at once. Tyler turned and went white. Nobody spoke. I set my truck keys on the counter and looked at him, then at her, then back at him. "I hired you to work in my garage," I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. "Not to shower in my bathroom and stand barefoot in my kitchen." Tyler opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Eroy, I can explain." "No," I said. "You can get your boots, get your truck, and get off my property." Dana stepped toward me. "Please, just let me talk." I looked at her then, really looked, and said, "You already had all the talking. What you ran out of was places to hide." She started crying right away. Hard, fast. Like that would put us into the version of the story where I was supposed to comfort her through her own betrayal. Tyler stared at the floor. He looked young then. Not in the flattering way, in the small way. A grown man shrinking because the room finally matched what he'd done. "How long?" I asked. Silence. I asked again. Dana whispered, "A few months." I laughed once. Not because anything was funny, because a few months is what people say when they want the truth to sound tidier than it was. Tyler said, "It wasn't supposed to." "Stop," I told him. "Do not finish that sentence in my house." That shut him up. Dana kept crying and trying to find the version of events that would soften me. She was lonely. I was always in the garage. Tyler needed help. It got out of hand. She never meant to hurt me. Those words came fast, but they all sounded used, like they'd already been rehearsed somewhere between my garage and my bedroom. I did not ask for details. That's a young man's mistake. Details don't heal you. They just move in and stay. I pointed toward the hallway. Both of you pack whatever you need for tonight and leave. Right now. Dana stared. Roy. Right now. This is my home too. No, I said. This was my home before you, and what you did in it is done. She looked at me then like she was seeing a locked door where she expected one more conversation. Tyler muttered, I'll go. I said, You'll both go. Dana started in again about talking tomorrow, about not doing anything rash, about how people work through things. I let her spend maybe 10 seconds on that before I cut it off. You asked me to hire him, I said. You asked me to teach him. You put him in my garage. Then you brought him into my house. There is no talk that makes that smaller. That hit her harder than yelling would have. Tyler got his boots. Dana packed a bag with shaking hands. I stood by the back door and watched the yard through the screen while they moved around behind me, making the sounds of a life breaking apart in practical little pieces. Drawer slides, hangers, zippers, cabinet doors. When Tyler came past me, he stopped like he wanted to say sorry. I never turned around. He left without saying it. Dana wheeled her overnight bag into the mudroom and stopped behind me. Are you really ending a marriage like this? I opened the back door. I'm ending it the way you built it, I said. Then she left too. I changed the back door code that night, changed the garage locks the next morning. Fired Tyler by text after sunrise because I wanted it in writing and because I had no intention of giving him one more private audience to perform remorse in my face. Dana called 14 times the first day and sent messages long enough to be letters. I read exactly one, and that was enough to tell me she still thought the main tragedy here was being caught, not what she had done. I called a lawyer the second day. Now, for the legal side, there wasn't any magic revenge. No judge slammed a gavel and handed me a trophy for being wronged. Real life is duller than that. The house and garage were mine before I ever married Dana, which mattered. It made some things cleaner. Not easy, just cleaner. There were still accounts to separate, property to list, furniture to argue over, and a marriage to reduce into paperwork. She tried once to talk about reconciliation through her cousin. I said no through my lawyer. Tyler disappeared the way men like him usually do when a comfortable situation collapses. Fast. What stayed behind was the part people don't tell you enough about. The strange quiet. The humiliation in ordinary places. The first morning coffee in a kitchen that still looked like a kitchen. The first evening locking up the garage and knowing no one would be coming out with a plate. The first time I used that bathroom again and found myself looking at the shower floor like an enemy had been in there. I closed the shop for 3 days, then opened it back up because engines don't care about your dignity and bills do not pause for heartbreak. That helped more than talking would have. There's honesty in work when people aren't. A month later, I threw that old ashtray in the trash. Not because of the cigarettes, because I was tired of looking at the place where my own life first stopped making sense. A few men around town heard what happened. A couple acted shocked. A couple were less surprised than I liked. That part stings too, finding out other people noticed a shift in your house before you did. But I learned something from that. Sometimes betrayal does not hide because it is so well disguised. Sometimes it hides because decent people don't want to be the ones to set fire to another man's life with a suspicion. I don't blame them for that anymore. The divorce was final 8 months later. By then I had hired a different helper, a 62-year-old widower named Leon, who moved slow, talked little, and could rebuild a carburetor without looking at me once. Not much of an apprentice, more of a companion in work. Better that way. I wasn't interested in mentoring anybody for a while after Tyler. Maybe not ever again. As for Dana, I heard she moved 2 towns over. Heard she and Tyler didn't last long after all the hidden parts had to live in daylight. That didn't give me any joy. People like to imagine betrayal ends with a perfect little dose of karma you can point to and say, there, balance restored. Usually it ends messier than that. People just keep becoming whoever they already were. Me, I kept the house, kept the garage, repainted the mudroom, replaced the shower threshold, bought a new set of towels, small, stubborn repairs, the kind that say I live here still. Sometimes customers ask why I never hired another young guy to train up. I tell them I got old. They laugh. That's fine. Let them. The truth is simpler. I do still believe in helping people. I do still believe a man can be changed by being taught real work. But I no longer confuse giving someone a chance with giving them access to everything I own. That was the lesson. Not that women lie. Not that younger men can't be trusted. Not even that marriage is fragile. All of those are too easy and too broad and too useless. The lesson was this. A house does not stop being yours all at once. It gets given away in inches. A door opened here. A habit ignored there. A cigarette where it should not be. A wet towel you know you did not touch. A lie told the same way by 2 different mouths. That is how you lose ground without hearing the walls move. And if there was one part of it that cut deeper than the affair itself, it was this. Dana did not find Tyler on her own in some random corner of the world and drag him into my life by accident. She asked me to take him in. She asked me to teach him. She stood in my kitchen and appealed to the exact part of me that still believed a man ought to give another man a chance if he could. That is the part she spent. Not my love. Not first. My decency. I think that's why the cigarette butts bothered me more than they should have at the beginning. Because even before I knew everything, some part of me understood what they meant. They meant he had crossed from the garage to the house, from work to home, from being a man on my property to being a man in my place. And once a man gets comfortable enough to smoke by your back door, the rest is usually just waiting for you to be ready to see it. These days, life is quieter. I work. I eat when I'm hungry. I sit on the back steps some evenings with a glass of tea and watch the light go down behind the shop. The path between the house and garage is still there. Same gravel, same ruts, same little weeds along the edge. Nothing about it looks dramatic. Just a short walk between 2 buildings. Funny how a short walk like that can hold so much damage, but it also holds something else now. Distance. Clean distance between what happened and what I let happen again. And every now and then, when I lock up for the night and head toward the house with my hands still smelling faintly of oil no matter how well I scrub, I think about how close I came to talking myself out of the truth because the truth was ugly. That is the real danger. Not betrayal itself. Betrayal is already ugly. It does not need your help. The danger is how badly decent people want an ugly thing to have a harmless explanation. So if something in your own life starts feeling off, pay attention early. Not because suspicion is wisdom. It isn't. Suspicion can ruin a decent mind if you feed it too much. But patterns matter. People tell on themselves with comfort long before they confess with words. For me, it was a pair of Marlboro Reds in an ashtray by the back door. That was enough.